Pregnant at 14 for an 18-year-old soldier, she defied her parents, risked everything to be with him, only to be abandoned for another woman, then cast out as a disgrace by her own family, starved, beaten, and dragged to be killed. She thought her life was over, but one sentence from a dying old man changing her fate forever. If this story has your heart racing, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe, and stay tuned. The most unbelievable part is yet to come. Isabel had been seeing Ethan since she was just 14 and he was 18. Her mother had warned her, insisting she end whatever was going on between them, but Isabel wouldn't listen. Her father wasn't just upset, he was furious. He pulled her out of school to keep her away from Ethan. But Isabel was determined, sneaking out to see him whenever she could. Ethan, at the time, was living with his uncle, who happened to stay near Isabel's house. Eventually, her father decided enough was enough. He, along with her brothers and the police, went to Ethan's uncle's place and had him arrested. Though Ethan was later released, his uncle was furious and made him leave, sending him back to his parents' home in another state. Months after Ethan left, Isabel discovered she was expecting. At just 15, she didn't know what to do. When her father found out, he threw her out, telling her she could never return. Communication back then was slow, with letters taking weeks or even months to arrive. Her mother, in secret, passed along a few of her belongings through the window. But when Isabel begged to stay, her mother was unforgiving. "You know you have no one else, and yet you still did this," her mother shouted angrily. "Please, mother, I made a mistake," Isabel begged on her knees. Her mother, fueled by anger, picked up a nearby object and threatened to hurl it at her. Terrified, Isabel fled the house as quickly as she could. Neighbors gathered, trying to intervene, but her parents refused to change their minds. After wandering aimlessly for hours, Isabel gathered up her clothes, tied them together, and set off, tears streaming down her face. Just as she was about to leave the neighborhood, she heard someone call her name. It was Aunt Sarah, a kind neighbor. "Isabel?" Aunt Sarah called out. "Yes, Ma," Isabel replied, her voice small and full of sorrow. Aunt Sarah hurried over and slipped something into her hand before rushing back inside. When Isabel looked down, she saw it was some money. She whispered a prayer of thanks, still unsure of where she would go. After walking for what felt like hours, Isabel remembered Ethan's uncle. She went straight to his house and knocked. Surprised to see her, he opened the door. "Isabel, what's happened to you? Are you all right?" he asked, clearly worried. "Sir, it's a long story," Isabel replied. Come in, sit down and tell me," he urged, leading her inside. "What's wrong? What's going on?" "No, sir, it's not that. I just need to know where Ethan is," Isabel said, her voice trembling. "Is something wrong?" the uncle asked, his face growing more serious. I'm expecting, sir, and my parents have thrown me out," she finally admitted. "What?" the uncle exclaimed in shock. "You kids today? So young and already facing such big problems. Are you even sure he will marry you?" "It was a mistake," Isabel sobbed. "Well," he said, shaking his head, "I can't do much for you, but I can give you his parents' address and some money for the trip." "Thank you, sir," Isabel whispered gratefully, sinking to her knees. The uncle disappeared for a moment and returned with some cash. Isabel thanked him again and hurried off to catch the next bus to Ethan's parents' place. She arrived at the station around 4 a.m., waiting in the chilly early morning air until the sun rose. When daylight finally came, she made her way to the address the uncle had given her. After a long walk, she arrived, and a woman stepped forward to greet her, signaling the beginning of the next chapter in her journey. "Yes?" the woman asked, her voice sharp and curious. "Good day, ma'am," Isabel greeted politely, lowering the bundle of clothes she had balanced on her head. "Who are you?" the woman repeated, her tone more insistent. "My name is Isabel, ma'am. I'm looking for Ethan," she replied, her voice faltering slightly. The woman's eyes narrowed. "Ethan?" she asked, her suspicion evident. "Yes, ma'am. Ethan and I were in a relationship, and I'm pregnant with his child," Isabel said, her voice trembling, fear creeping in. The woman recoiled, her eyes flashing with anger. "What? God help us! So you show up here, claiming you're pregnant just because you heard Ethan joined the military? Now, pick up that mess you dropped and leave my house. How old are you, running around with such shameful behavior?" She spat, her voice rising in fury. Isabel began to cry uncontrollably, her mind racing with the terrifying thought of where she would go if they turned her away. She stood frozen, her heart pounding, when a man who bore a striking resemblance to Ethan entered the yard. His hair was graying, his face weathered but kind. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone calm yet authoritative. The woman whirled around, her anger directed at him now. "My husband! This girl has come here, claiming Ethan got her pregnant," she exclaimed, throwing her hands in the air. The man looked from his wife to Isabel, his expression hardening. "And where did she come from?" he asked sternly. "From where Ethan was staying with his uncle, sir. We were together before he left for the military," Isabel explained, her cheeks wet with tears. The man paused, shaking his head in disbelief. "Ethan joined the army a few weeks ago. He won't be back anytime soon," he said, studying her closely. "Sir, I have nowhere else to go. My parents threw me out and told me never to come back," Isabel whispered, her voice breaking. The man sighed deeply, clearly torn. "How did you even find your way here?" "His uncle gave me your address," she replied, her voice small and desperate. "You can't stay here," the woman suddenly shouted, her eyes wild. "Take your things and leave this house right now." But the man's expression darkened. "Your house? Did you bring a house with you when we got married?" He shot back, his voice cold. Then, turning to Isabel, his tone softened. "My child, are you sure Ethan is responsible for this?" "Yes, sir." She nodded firmly. The man rubbed his temples before speaking again. "Pick up your things," he instructed, gesturing to his wife. "Take her to the third room. She can stay until Ethan returns." Isabel, overwhelmed with relief, dropped to her knees. "Thank you, sir, thank you," she whispered. But the woman was far from done. As she led Isabel to the room, she muttered under her breath, "You think you can just show up here and claim to be pregnant with my son's child? You'll regret this. Ethan would never do such a thing. I bet he's never even seen a woman's underwear, let alone—" Her voice was filled with venom, but Isabel tuned it out. For now, she had a place to stay. That night, Ethan's father, whom Isabel decided to call Dad, summoned her to the living room. He was sitting with his wife and two of Ethan's siblings, a boy and a girl. His gaze was kind as he looked at her. "You've been in your room all day. Why don't you step outside to get some fresh air?" Dad asked gently. "Nothing, sir," Isabel replied, though her eyes flickered nervously toward Ethan's mother, who was glaring at her with an intensity that made her stomach churn. "What's your name again?" Dad asked, breaking the tension. "My name is Isabel, sir," she answered quietly. "Well, I'll call you Nigo for short. As you know, I'm Ethan's father. Over there is his mother, and these are his younger siblings, Tyler and Olivia. Make yourself comfortable. You're welcome here," Dad said warmly. Even if Ethan isn't responsible for your pregnancy, I'm the kind of man who would help you anyway. It's in my nature. But knowing that I'll be a grandfather soon, I'll make sure you're taken care of until Ethan comes back," he added, giving her a reassuring smile. Tyler, Ethan's younger brother, broke the moment with a question. "But how sure are you that Ethan is even the father?" Dad didn't hesitate. "Only a woman knows who the father of her child is," he replied firmly. Ethan's mother muttered something under her breath, clearly unhappy, but the conversation ended there. They all retired to their rooms that night, and as Isabel lay in bed, she prayed quietly for Ethan's safe return. She also decided to call Ethan's mother Mom, hoping that, in time, they could be more like family. Months went by, and Isabel endured cruel treatment from Mom and Tyler, but Dad and Olivia remained kind to her. 6 months later, Isabel's pregnancy was obvious. One morning, as she swept the yard, she spotted a figure walking toward the house from afar. She squinted, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Ethan. Overcome with emotion, she threw down the broom and ran toward him, her arms outstretched. But before she could embrace him, Ethan pushed her away, his eyes cold as he looked her up and down. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice sharp and distant. Before Isabel could even answer, a piercing scream erupted from behind them. It was his mother, her voice trembling with disbelief. Ethan's siblings rushed out, their faces frozen in shock, but Ethan's gaze stayed locked on Isabel, filled with confusion and disbelief, as though he couldn't comprehend her being there at all. "Mom, what's going on? Why is she here looking like that?" Ethan's voice wavered, a hint of unease slipping through. His mother, trying to keep the situation calm, responded softly, "Son, come inside and freshen up first. We'll talk after you've rested." But Ethan was insistent. "No, Mom. How did she get here?" His eyes remained fixed on her, refusing to move until he got an answer. His mother let out a long sigh, her face clouded with discomfort. "She showed up, claiming you got her pregnant. She's been living here for 6 months. I told your father that the Ethan I know would never behave like that, but he didn't believe me." Her eyes widened as she relived the moment, fear flickering in her expression as she heard Dad, Ethan's father, call from the front porch. Ethan quickly hurried over to greet his father. They exchanged words she couldn't quite hear, and moments later, Ethan followed him inside without another glance. A deep disappointment surged through her. How could he act so coldly? How could he have changed so completely? This was the same Ethan who had taken her heart, her innocence. A few minutes passed before she was summoned into the living room. There, Dad, Ethan, his mother and his siblings were seated, waiting. Dad's tone was firm as he spoke. "Ethan, this young lady claims you got her pregnant. Is it true?" Ethan hesitated, his head hanging low. His voice was barely audible when he replied, "I was with her once, but I didn't know she'd get pregnant." Dad's expression softened slightly, but his words were still unyielding. "Well, she's your responsibility now, whether you're ready for marriage or not." Weeks passed, and Ethan left for his post, leaving her with nothing but $20. That afternoon, she found herself in the kitchen, worn out from the day's chores. She knew she had to cook something before Mom returned from the market, or she would face an avalanche of sharp words. As she placed the pot on the stove, Ethan's younger brother, Tyler, stormed into the kitchen. "Where's my food?" he demanded, his voice sharp with impatience. "Please give me an hour. It's not ready yet," she pleaded, hoping he would understand. Tyler's face twisted with disdain. "All you know how to do is lie with men at your age. What have you been doing all day?" he snarled. Her patience snapped. "I won't let you speak to me like that. Be patient or make it yourself," she shot back, her voice shaking with anger. Tyler's eyes blazed with fury as he slapped her hard across the face. Instinctively, she slapped him back, and before she knew it, a violent struggle broke out. Tyler pushed her to the ground, grabbed a piece of firewood, and began striking her until everything went black. When she regained consciousness, she found herself in a hospital bed, weak but alive. She had undergone surgery and given birth to twins, a boy and a girl. A week later, she was discharged from the hospital, only to discover that Tyler had been arrested and spent a week in custody, only recently being released. No one in the family had mentioned it. "Dad told Mom not to burden you with any more problems," a cousin named Nathan explained quietly. When her children were 10 months old, Dad called her into his room. He handed her an envelope with Ethan's address and some money for the trip, urging her to visit him. Ethan had only sent letters since the birth of their children and had yet to meet them. A few days later, she packed a bag, gathered her kids, and made her way to the military barracks where Ethan was stationed. An officer escorted her to Ethan's apartment. Exhausted, she had only one thought in mind: to bathe her children and herself and find some rest. But the sight of a woman's shoes at the front door sent a jolt of dread through her. When Ethan stepped out, his face paled with shock. "Isabel!" he gasped, hastily closing the door behind him. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" She looked at him, her voice trembling. "Is this how you welcome the mother of your children, after all this time?" Ethan barely met her gaze. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a few bills, handing them to her. "Take this. Go back home. I'll come visit by the end of the month," he said, his tone cold and distant. Her eyes filled with tears. "You won't even let us in?" she asked, her voice breaking. Just then, a woman's voice rang out from inside. A moment later, a woman appeared at the door. "Who is this?" she asked, eyeing Isabel with suspicion. "She's my sister from back home," Ethan lied quickly. "I've already given her money to leave." Isabel stood there, frozen, her heart shattering as her children began to cry from hunger. Ethan turned, leading the woman back inside, and the door shut behind them. "How can someone show up unannounced like that?" the girlfriend muttered as they disappeared inside. "Even if it's your brother, she should know to send a letter first." Isabel couldn't bring herself to leave. Instead, she sat outside the door, tears falling silently as she breastfed her children. Despair weighed heavily on her. Thoughts of leaving her babies behind and running away flooded her mind, but the future loomed too uncertain. Would Ethan care for them, or would they be left to suffer without her? An hour later, Ethan emerged once again, his face filled with surprise when he saw them still there. "Are you still here? Take them and go home," Ethan barked, the frustration in his voice unmistakable. "I'll come visit by the end of the month." Isabel stood, disbelief shaking her every word. "How can you be so heartless? This is the first time you've seen your own twins and you show no remorse, no love." "I don't have time for this," he snapped, cutting her off. "By the time I return from work, I expect you to be gone." Without waiting for a response, he stormed out. Isabel looked at her crying children, her heart breaking even more. She sat back down and began to nurse them, the weight of the moment almost too much to bear. She thought about using the little money Ethan had left her to get food, but her spirit was crushed, her mind too numb to make any decisions. As she sat in silence, a female officer passed by, glancing at her curiously. Isabel greeted the woman, keeping her head low to hide the tears still falling. The officer paused, taking a closer look, and turned back. "Ma'am, is everything okay?" she asked gently. "No, Ma'am," Isabel whispered, her voice barely a breath. "You can talk to me," the officer urged. "These babies are too young to be out in this heat, and it's not good for you either. Are you here waiting for someone?" Slowly, Isabel opened up, sharing her story. To her surprise, the officer's eyes softened with empathy, filling with unshed tears. She couldn't have imagined that a military woman would be so kind. Without hesitation, the officer scooped up the babies and said, "Come with me." Grateful beyond words, Isabel picked up her bag and followed the woman back to her apartment. There, they bathed, fed, and cared for her and her children, offering her a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. That evening, as they sat together, the officer revealed her own story, a tale of being abandoned by her husband for not being able to have children. She had joined the military and never remarried. Days passed peacefully, but on the 5th day, they ran out of sugar, and Isabel decided to step out to buy some. On her way back, she passed by Ethan's place. His girlfriend was lounging outside, sipping on iced tea, a magazine spread out before her. Isabel greeted her politely, but the woman didn't even acknowledge her. She shrugged it off and kept walking. But just as she was about to pass again, the woman reached out, grabbing her shirt and yanking her back. "If you think you can play wife or sister to Ethan, you're wasting your time," the girlfriend sneered. "He's mine now." "Well, congratulations," Isabel replied, keeping her voice calm. "I hope he marries you." She turned to leave, but the woman wasn't done. She yanked her back again, her voice dripping with malice. "And don't even think about using this path anymore. It's for military families only." Isabel's patience snapped. "You don't get to decide where I can walk," she shot back, fury rising. In an instant, the girlfriend slapped her. Without hesitation, Isabel struck back, and before she knew it, the fight escalated. The girlfriend grabbed her glass of iced tea and smashed it against Isabel's head. Blood streamed down her face as onlookers rushed over, pulling them apart. Some hurried to hold the girlfriend back, while others urged Isabel to take her crying children inside. Though she was hurt and bleeding, Isabel would have kept fighting if it weren't for her children. She gathered them into her arms, now stained with blood, and was about to leave when Ethan arrived. His girlfriend, now putting on a show, burst into tears, claiming Isabel had started the fight. Without hesitation, Ethan turned on her, striking her, completely ignoring the fact that she was holding their children. Neighbors rushed in to break them apart, dragging Isabel back to the apartment while one of them helped clean and bandage her wounds. Later that evening, the military officer returned and immediately noticed Isabel's bandaged head. She didn't ask many questions, only a simple, "What happened?" After hearing the story, she quietly said, "Okay." But a few minutes later, the sound of screams erupted from Ethan's flat. Isabel rushed outside, her heart pounding, only to find the military woman standing there with a horsewhip in hand. Ethan and his girlfriend were dripping with sweat, being forced to do frog jumps as she whipped them relentlessly. The scene was surreal. No one dared to intervene. Ethan's girlfriend was wailing in exhaustion, but the crack of the whip kept her jumping. The officer's fury was written all over her face as she took turns disciplining them. Isabel wanted to ask her to stop, but fear held her back. "You two will kneel before Isabel and apologize," the officer commanded, her voice hard as steel. "You treat her like she's nothing, but she's the mother of his children. If you don't want her, Ethan, then leave her alone. But mark my words, you'll regret this one day." Ethan and his girlfriend, desperate and broken, fell to their knees. "We're sorry," they muttered in unison. "I'm going inside," the officer said, turning away. "But you both will keep hopping until I say otherwise." She handed Isabel's children back to her, her face softening as she whispered, You and your kids are safe now." "Let's go," Isabel whispered, casting nervous glances behind her as they hurried away, leaving behind the others still being punished. Once inside the living room, she fell to her knees before the woman, her face wet with tears. "Thank you, ma'am," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "Get up. That's enough," the woman said gently, helping her to her feet. "You can call me Auntie Claire. No need for all these formalities." Isabel managed a small smile through her tears. "Okay, ma'am," she replied. The next day, Auntie Claire handed Isabel some money and asked her to head to the market for groceries. As she walked, Isabel found herself near Ethan's apartment. His girlfriend was outside, hanging up laundry. Isabel watched her from a distance, marveling at the woman's resilience despite what had happened the day before. But the moment the girlfriend spotted Isabel, she dropped the clothes and rushed over, ripping at Isabel's dress with ferocity. Isabel stood frozen, not saying a word. "You think I'm scared of that woman who took you in?" The girlfriend spat. "I've been waiting for you all day. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you never came back here." She continued tearing at Isabel's clothes with a cold, vicious determination. Ethan emerged from the doorway, shocked by the scene unfolding in front of him. "What are you doing?" he exclaimed, walking toward her. "Don't you know the woman who took her in is my superior at work? Have you forgotten what happened to us yesterday? Stop this right now. I don't want any more trouble with my boss." But his girlfriend didn't stop. She ignored Ethan and kept ripping at the fabric. In a desperate attempt to intervene, Ethan tried to pull her away, but she turned on him, lashing out violently. Eventually, Ethan, pushed to his limit, struck her. He stormed inside and came back with her belongings, tossing them onto the street. Isabel watched the entire scene, wondering how it would end. "Leave. I'm done with you," Ethan shouted. The girlfriend stood there, screaming insults and sobbing, but Ethan's decision was final. Shaking her head, Isabel quietly slipped away, returning inside to change into a new set of clothes. When she came back out, the girlfriend was gone. Isabel didn't bother telling Auntie Claire what had happened. 2 weeks later, she approached Auntie Claire, explaining that she needed to go back home. Although Auntie Claire tried to persuade her to stay, Isabel was resolute. She needed to inform Ethan's father about everything that had transpired. Reluctantly, Auntie Claire gave her a large sum of money and told her she was always welcome to visit. The next day, Auntie Claire accompanied Isabel and her children to the bus station. A few hours into the journey, their vehicle was ambushed by robbers. The driver swerved into the nearby woods, and as soon as the van came to a stop, the passengers scattered, abandoning their bags and fleeing into the forest. Isabel, clutching her twins tightly, ran as fast as she could until she was deep in the woods, surrounded by trees, completely lost. Her children began to cry, and in her distress, Isabel started sobbing too. "Who's there? What are you doing out here?" A voice called from the shadows. Terrified, Isabel dropped to her knees, her heart racing. "Please have mercy," she begged. A man emerged from the trees. "No, no," he said quickly, his tone kind. "Get up, I mean no harm. I'm just gathering herbs. How did you end up here?" Isabel explained everything in between sobs, and the man, moved by her plight, offered to carry one of the twins and led them back to his home. By then, the sun had long set, and it was almost 7 p.m. The man's wife served them a meal, but as they ate, Isabel overheard a tense conversation. "Where did you find her?" the woman asked, her voice low but filled with worry. "You know the Oro festival, the one where no strangers or women are allowed outside, started 2 nights ago. Bringing her here is dangerous." "Are you planning to tell the priest I brought her in?" the man snapped. "We used the back road. No one saw us. Now keep quiet." His wife muttered, "I don't want any trouble with the gods." Isabel's appetite vanished, fear gripping her. She knew all too well what the Oro festival entailed. But where could she go? She was too scared to stay, yet there was nowhere else to run. Moments later, the man showed her to a small room where she could rest for the night. She lay there, wide-eyed, her mind racing. About an hour later, she heard frantic footsteps approaching the house. A young voice called out urgently, "Dad! Dad!" Isabel's heart leaped into her throat as she overheard the boy's panicked voice from her room. "What is it?" the man's deep voice boomed. "The Oro men are coming this way," the boy panted breathlessly. "Oh God," Isabel whispered, her body stiff with fear. Outside, the man, his wife, and their children gathered to await the Oro men. Isabel could hear them from where she was hiding, her breath quickening as the sound of footsteps drew closer. "Good evening," she heard the Oro men say, their voices echoing outside the door. She stood there, trembling, her heart pounding as she silently prayed that her children would stay asleep. "We've been informed that you're hiding someone. Is that true?" one of the Oro men demanded, his voice cutting through the still night air. "No, absolutely not," the man responded quickly, trying to sound convincing. "Yes, we are," his wife interrupted, her voice shaking. "I don't want to die. My husband brought a woman and her 2 children here this morning despite my warnings. He didn't listen." She was frantic now, fear seeping into every word. "Your husband knows well about the Oro festival and its significance. Yet he disrespected the traditions of our land," one of the Oro men said coldly. "Bring out the stranger and her children. They will serve as the sacrifice to cleanse the land. As for you, you'll face the consequences of your actions," another added, his tone even more chilling. Suddenly, the man's son burst into the room where Isabel and her children were hiding. "Come out, please. Just take your children and leave," he ordered, his voice filled with dread. Isabel was already sobbing, fear overwhelming her. She pleaded with him, begging to take her instead and spare her children, but he shook his head, refusing her desperate request. With no other choice, Isabel gently lifted her sleeping twins into her arms and stepped outside, her legs shaking. The Oro men, dressed in crimson with palm fronds tied around their arms, stood waiting. One of them gripped a long staff, his expression hard and unyielding. "Young woman, we are observing the Oro festival. During this sacred time, no outsiders are allowed. Anyone harboring a stranger will be punished, and the stranger must be sacrificed to cleanse and protect the land," the man stated with grim authority. Isabel dropped to her knees, her voice breaking as she begged for mercy, recounting all she had been through. But her words met only cold indifference. "What you've been through isn't our concern. Only natives of this land have a chance at being spared. You are not one of us," the man replied, his voice void of sympathy. "Bring her and the children," one of them ordered. Isabel's cries filled the air, her tears streaking through the dust on her face. She clutched her now-awake children tightly, praying for a miracle. "I refuse to believe that my blood and my children's blood will be used for this," she whispered, her prayers desperate. One of the men grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet, and they led her away. As they walked, Isabel glanced back at the man and his wife, silently begging for help. But none came. After only a few steps, the man with the staff pointed it toward the husband who had sheltered her. In an instant, a flash of lightning struck, and the man collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Isabel gasped, holding her children tighter, terror gripping her as they continued their march. They finally arrived at a shrine where she was forced to kneel, her children in her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she prayed, her heart aching. The native doctor approached holding a calabash, and as he moved to touch her forehead, a powerful force flung him backward. "Where did you bring her from?" he thundered, his eyes wide with shock. "She's the stranger brought by the herbalist," one of the Oro men stammered, equally stunned. The native doctor's face twisted in disbelief. "Take her away from here. She's not a stranger. She belongs to this land," he shouted, waving them off. Shocked, the men who had escorted Isabel led her and her children to the outskirts of the town. Once they left, she hurried away, her heart racing with fear that they might change their minds. She walked through the dark, lonely road, constantly thanking God for sparing her and her children. Eventually, after walking for what seemed like an eternity, she stumbled upon a small village. The first building she saw was a Catholic church, its doors open. She entered, her steps slow and weary, and knelt at the altar, thanking God for the miracle that had saved her life. By morning, around 6 a.m., people began arriving for Mass. They were startled to see her there, exhausted and covered in dirt. When the priest and the congregation heard her story, they were moved with compassion. They gathered money to help her continue her journey, and one of the villagers offered his home so she could freshen up before leaving with her children. Later that evening, Isabel returned home, only to find a group of mourners gathered outside. Ethan was there too, his face solemn. Her heart sank as she wondered what had happened. Olivia, a familiar face, ran toward her and helped carry one of her twins. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "Daddy is dead," Olivia sobbed, barely able to get the words out. Isabel froze, the news hitting her like a punch to the chest. "Which daddy?" she asked, her voice breaking. Olivia couldn't even answer, and Isabel's world began to crumble. Her father was gone, leaving her with no direction, no security. She wailed, her cries piercing the air, but nothing could bring him back. She stumbled through the crowd, making her way toward her room, only to find the padlock had been changed. "Auntie, wait! I'll get the key from Mum," Olivia said quickly, running off. When she returned, she hesitated, scratching her head nervously. "Olivia, where is the key?" Isabel asked, her patience thinning. Brother Ethan came home with his girlfriend yesterday, and Mum gave your room to her," Olivia revealed reluctantly. "What?" Isabel gasped, her worst fears confirmed. "I knew it. Now that Dad is gone, my real suffering has begun." Olivia looked at her with sympathy. "Auntie, let me take you to the pastor's house. He'll let you stay for a while, I'm sure of it," she suggested, trying to offer some hope. But Isabel could only think of the bleak future ahead, her mind racing with dread. As she stood there, lost in thought, Ethan's girlfriend, a woman she had crossed paths with before, sauntered in. She looked Isabel up and down, then let out a smug laugh. "You really thought Ethan would have nothing to do with me anymore, didn't you? Well, let me give you a reality check. I'm not only going to be his wife, but I'm also expecting his child," she sneered, placing a hand on her belly. "And whether you're alive or not, I will marry him." Before Isabel could respond, Olivia stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Ethan will never marry you, because Auntie Isabel is far from dying. It's you who should worry. You have no idea what's coming for you." Ethan's girlfriend stormed up to Olivia, her hand raised to strike, but Olivia was quicker. She caught her wrist mid-air. "Not a chance. Home wrecker. When the time comes, I'll even buy you a handkerchief to dry your pathetic tears," Olivia spat, her voice sharp with disdain. She turned swiftly to Isabel, who was still frozen in shock. "Let's go," she ordered. Isabel, too stunned to respond, followed her in a daze. They headed straight to the pastor's house, where Isabel was welcomed without hesitation. Dad's burial was in 3 days. The next morning, Isabel returned to help with preparations, hoping to contribute. As she approached the group of women, a harsh voice rang out behind her. "And just what do you think you're doing here? Get out!" Ethan's voice boomed across the room, commanding attention. "Don't touch anything! Get out now!" he roared. All eyes turned toward her, and the weight of their stares was unbearable. Humiliated, Isabel rushed away, tears streaming down her face. The following day, she was summoned to meet with the elders. Ethan, his girlfriend, and other family members were all there, the tension thick in the air. "Good afternoon, everyone," an elder began, his voice steady. "I am Uday, Ethan's uncle and his late father's brother. I am here to reveal my brother's final wishes." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "For those who may doubt me, I recorded his words on my phone. Let's play it." He tapped the device and the room fell silent as the voice message began. "Greetings to all. You hear my voice now, so there should be no doubt. Isabel, my daughter, I greet you. You might not know, but I visited your home with my brother Uday, intending to speak with your family and offer your bride price. But your mother chased us away, telling us to do as we pleased with you. Ethan, my son, listen well. You will marry Isabel, and there will be no backing out. No other woman will be accepted as your wife. She is the first, and she shall remain your only wife. This must be done before my burial. If you fail to marry her, you will not participate in the burial rites. Take care of her and take her with you." As the recording ended, the room was left in stunned silence. Ethan's girlfriend broke down in tears. Olivia, ever calm, walked over and handed her a handkerchief, her words dripping with irony. "Here, like I said, something to wipe those tears." The girlfriend took it, her sobs only growing louder. Isabel stood there, overwhelmed. She had seen such devices before, but never imagined they could be used to record someone's voice. Her mind raced. How did it come to this? Uncle Uday spoke again, bringing everyone back to the present. "We must complete the marriage rites today so that Ethan can take part in the burial tomorrow," he announced. He gave orders to gather the elders and pastor for the ceremony. That very day, Ethan and Isabel were married traditionally, followed by a formal blessing. As the rituals concluded, Isabel's thoughts swirled with doubt. Will I regret this? She wondered silently. When it came time for Ethan to embrace her, he did so half-heartedly, looking away. She didn't even bother to hug him back. A hug was the least of her concerns. What worried her was how Ethan would treat her and the children when they returned to his home. She hadn't wanted this marriage, but with Dad gone, she had no choice. There was nowhere else to go. After the ceremony, she asked to stay at the pastor's house until they were ready to leave for Ethan's home. The family agreed. That night, Olivia came running into Isabel's room, panic on her face. "Auntie, you have to come with me," she urged, grabbing her hand. "What is it? What's happened?" Isabel asked, alarmed. "Just come, please," Olivia insisted, pulling her along. Isabel quickly asked the pastor's wife to watch over her sleeping children, and she followed Olivia into the night. They arrived at Ethan's family home, where Ethan's girlfriend stood outside, her bags packed, tears streaming down her face. Isabel turned to Olivia, her voice low. "Is she leaving?" Olivia nodded, stifling a laugh. "She claims she saw Dad's ghost in her room and she ran out screaming," she said, barely able to contain her amusement. "My mum helped her pack and told her to leave. For now. She said she'll send for her later." That night, Ethan's girlfriend left, and Isabel returned to the pastor's house. As she lay in bed, she reflected on everything that had unfolded. The whirlwind of events made sleep difficult, but eventually exhaustion won over, and she drifted off, her thoughts still racing. On the day of the burial, Isabel could barely swallow a bite. Her heart was weighed down with too much grief to think about food. After the service, she wandered into the kitchen, hoping to find something to eat, but the shelves were empty. Some of the visitors had given her children small cash gifts, so she decided to use that to buy a few cups of rice. She was kneeling by the stove preparing to start a fire when Mom entered the room. "Who's there? What are you doing?" Mom asked sharply. "Good afternoon, Mom." "It's me," Isabel answered quietly. "The children and I haven't eaten all day, so I bought some rice and I'm about to cook it." Mum's eyes narrowed. "You bought rice? From where? You went and helped yourself to my rice without asking, didn't you?" "No, Mom," Isabel stammered, her voice breaking. "I bought it myself." "With what money?" Mum snapped, glaring. "Look at you, a pitiful sight. The man who used to treat you like royalty is gone now, and now you'll know what it means to struggle. Hand over that rice and get out." She grabbed the rice from Isabel's hands and stormed out. Tears streamed down Isabel's face as she gathered her children and left the kitchen quietly. With no other options, she walked to the pastor's house, hoping for some kindness. When his wife answered the door, Isabel pleaded for food, not for herself, but for her children. Moved by her desperation, the pastor's wife returned with 2 plates of rice and a bottle of soda. But Isabel was too broken to eat. Ethan's mother had called her miserable. Was that what she had become? She couldn't even deny it. Everything she had worn to the funeral had been a gift from Olivia. Sitting there with her thoughts swirling, Isabel couldn't shake the memories of how her own parents had cast her out, leaving her to fend for herself in this world. For the rest of the day, she stayed hidden away, too shattered to face anyone. Ethan had been home for a few weeks on leave following the burial. Finally, he visited the pastor's house, but only to tell them that they would be leaving for his base the next day. After he left, Isabel voiced her discomfort about the move to the pastor. He reassured her, telling her everything would be fine. But deep down, she wasn't so sure. The next day came too soon. Olivia came to say her goodbyes, embracing Isabel tightly. "You're the best sister-in-law anyone could ask for," she whispered. Isabel, eyes brimming with tears, looked at her. "You're just like Dad. I pray you find nothing but happiness in life, Olivia." They rode in a tricycle to the bus park, waving at each other until they were out of sight. Once at the park, they boarded a bus for the long journey ahead. Ethan didn't bother to help carry any of the children, leaving Isabel to manage them alone. A stranger offered to help, but Isabel declined. Her children were her strength, her joy, and even in exhaustion, she found comfort in carrying them. When they finally reached their destination, Ethan took out a key and walked up to the door of his house. But before he could insert it into the lock, the door swung open. Standing there, to Isabel's shock, was Ethan's girlfriend. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the story so far, please drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you won't comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you won't miss any updates. Thank you. And remember, we love you.